Welcome back, Resonators. This is Rhymes That Resonate, the podcast where we explore the soundtracks that accompany extraordinary lives. Today, I have with me Alyssa Chavez, national qualified bodybuilder, former Army drill sergeant, current security director, facility director too, um, model, mother, and soon to be private security and firearms instructor. Um, Definitely appreciate you making the time to join us here today. Alyssa, please tell the people about yourself.
Like you said, I do a lot of things. Day job is security director. I'm just kind of helping out with facilities right now. Um, and I love what I do. I've been in the security industry, I guess you could say, for a long time, and with the military. You just are doing it all the time. And I am a firearms fanatic. I have a bunch. I love them. I love teaching them. Love making people not be afraid of them to
Hmm.
operate. Um, Multi-published model, just doing all the things in bodybuilding.
That's right.
So yeah.
That's awesome. And so I guess one of my initial questions is just like, how do you find yourself in all of these different areas of life, these positions, these places? Because I mean, even with the facility director, you literally, like you were there, and like it happens. Like, how do these things come about?
Yeah, I've always kind of been sort of like a natural leader.
Hmm.
And it's gone well for me, and sometimes it's not gone well for me because I didn't know how to, control it. And sometimes people don't want to be led. But
Hmm.
um I think, as you kind of hone your skills and sharpen your tools in your toolbox and all that, you just kind of get better when it comes to leading people and taking care of your team and making sure people that aren't even your direct reports, like some of the stuff I'm doing at work, just making sure they're taken care of, making sure they got what they need. They got somebody they can kind of lean on when they need it. But I started out in kind of like law enforcement arena training as like a teenager, went
Hmm.
military. um Always been kind of like the take care of the underdog kind of person, even on when I was a kid on the playground, not even know what I was doing. If somebody was getting bullied, I was
Hmm.
stepping in. And then became a drill because I love to instruct. I love teaching. That's like my biggest thing. If I can combine being a leader and teaching,
Hmm.
so being a drill is my thing. um and then, I got out of the military, stayed kind of in that capacity. And I feel like being a drill, and you'll know this, it like advances you from a leadership perspective if you're good at it, in terms of matching with other leaders and like
Hmm.
identifying people's strengths, people's weaknesses, and figuring out where you fit in instead of just like trying to take those people down. Uh,
Mm.
and I feel like that definitely shaped my ability to be as young as I am, but be doing the things that I'm doing and have the opportunities that I've had. With modeling, it just kind of like evolved with bodybuilding.
Mhm.
I broke my hip in the army.
Mm.
Stayed in instead of med boarding because I was competitive. I don't know why. Looking
Mm.
back, I should have just med boarded, but
Jeez.
I didn't. So I stayed in and was like, I got to re-strengthen. And so part of the re-strengthening process was falling in love with the aesthetic of bodybuilding and having muscle and
Mm.
having, strength. And so I did that. And then with, the different ebbs and flows of bodybuilding, getting lean, getting thicker, putting on muscle, came photo shoots because people want to document that. And I have
Mhm.
a different body type than most, models. 5'2", but I'm like a freaking little brick shithouse kind of. And so photographer, and I have tattoos, and so it's a very
Mhm.
different look. And so it kind of gives photographers a chance to do different concepts.
Mhm.
And there's really no shortage of shoot opportunities. I've had to like limit how much I do to make sure I like take time for myself.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, in not in a sloppy way, but you're all over the place, right? Like
Yeah.
that's you said a lot, right? And I think one of the things that I probably want to touch on first is just the levels of leadership, the opportunities, the leadership that you've had from, you said from your teenage years up until now, like not only feeling like a natural leader, but being in those positions to be a leader and showcase your leadership skills. um when did you ever learn to follow?
Um, I think I learned probably in basic, but I'd say after basic, when I went back to my unit, I went from being kind of the girl who's good at everything, like in high school. Like I was
Mhm.
a pianist, violinist, had
Mhm.
more friends than even I thought I had. People like remember me, I guess. I don't know. Um, and then, basic, a lot of people didn't like me. And it was
Mhm.
a couple different factors there where like I was just on a different page mentally than a lot of the people I was in basic with. Totally different jobs in the same day together. Like we did not get along. Um, some of them wanted to work harder instead of smarter. I wanted to work smarter, and we butt heads.
Mhm.
Um, and I wasn't good at delivering those ideas either.
Mhm.
I had not honed that communication skill.
Yeah.
And then when I got to my unit, I dealt with a lot of drama in between those things. But
Mhm.
there were a lot of people in my unit that had a lot of experience. And I realized, there's always going to be somebody bigger than me. There's
Mhm.
always going to be somebody better than me. There's always somebody that outranks me of some sort. There's somebody that knows more than I do. And I learned to shut up pretty
Mm.
quickly and learn to kind of not take the lead on everything all the time and just kind of hang back and be, the E3, E4 mafia
Mhm.
until the drill sergeant opportunity came up, which is what I'd wanted to do. And I did it. But even at drill sergeant school, you know, you learn kind of how to follow, but kind of how to lead your peers,
Mhm.
which is hard because you lead your peers and nobody
Mhm.
wants to be led by someone who's the same rank as them.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's just been kind of a combination of that coupled with like my civilian jobs and all that. I've kind of learned to be a decent employee. But I definitely feel like now that I've kind of honed my skills and just kind of polished things, that you're not an effective leader if you can't effectively follow, if you can't
Yeah.
do what you're told, even if you disagree, if you can't get the job done or communicate. Either way, it's just it ain't it. So
Wow. It's you touched on something else that I wanted to really connect with in your initial statement, which was, learning to mesh with other leaders, right?
yes,
And finding that balance. And I laugh because the delivery is such a powerful tool.
hmm
And I think that's where I struggled often is being able to take an idea, a thought, or an initiative and put it in words where people were following what I was saying,
yep,
not like through actions, but understanding,
yeah,
right? And so that can create frustrations and all this kind of stuff, and it becomes a cycle of like
yeah.
not so much like it feels like I don't like you, you don't like me, but really we just
We're
haven't
just not
learned
on
to
the same
mesh
page.
yet.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like being a drill, especially when I got off or got out of school, like drill sergeant school, I went straight to Benning. And I was baby drill. I
Hmm.
was the only female, aside from one other one who was also filling in. Like I was only one that like in a sea full of men
Hmm.
infantry, men drills. They hadn't had any females.
Hmm.
And it was definitely one of those moments where kind of like at my first unit, I was like, I'm it's gonna go one of two ways, and I have to be okay with whatever way this goes. Either they're going to totally dump everything that sucks on me
Hmm.
and I just need to deal with it, or they're gonna accept me as one of their own and we're gonna just like run like a bunch of brothers basically.
Yeah.
And I got lucky that they went with the second option. Picked me right up and just were like, "All right, you're one of us. Let's go." And to this day, they're still some of my best friends. But that was definitely one of those defining moments where I feel like I had to step back
Hmm.
and not try to prove myself. Not try to be that female in a sea full of men that's like trying to
Hmm.
keep up with them. And I was like, no, like I'm supposed to be here. I have to be okay with it. And whatever happens, happens. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, it's not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of them, however it goes, if they can be professional or not.
Hmm.
But that's where I also learned that, like, in the civilian world, everything's so dog eat dog. Like,
Mm.
you don't like somebody, you can kind of avoid them, or you might be able to get them fired. Like, people do terrible things
Yeah, that's
in the
true.
army, especially as a drill, when you're having to present such a unified front to trainees that like you can't show any vulnerabilities in your team. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's where I learned, if someone's good at something, you let them do what they're good at. If they're not good at something and you're good at it, you step in and don't make them do it because they'll look stupid and you don't want to
Mhm.
look stupid to your trainees.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there's another security director in the market. He's an former Air Force drill. And we were talking even on Thursday about this. I'm like, I feel like you and I have this concept that we all can be good at something and we all can suck at something. And we all don't have to be good at every single thing as
Mhm.
long as we know how to meet each other's deficiencies and, you know, come together as basically like pieces to a puzzle. So
Mhm.
I feel like that definitely shaped how I address things and how I view my employees, how I view my like colleagues, my bosses,
Mhm.
not as like, wow, he fucking sucks, but it's like he sucks at that, but he's really good at this. So let me do more of this
Yeah.
and I'll do some of that. So so yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, through that progression, you've had to really, like, quell that fire, right? And, like, bring it in,
Yeah. Because I'm gonna
and
tell him like, bro, you suck. But like then I'm like, I suck at 1,000 things right off the top of my
Mhm.
head. So it's like I don't want to hear that I suck. He probably
Mhm.
doesn't want to hear that he sucks. Let's just talk about what we're good at and move forward.
Yeah, and some of that comes with age and wisdom and time, and, that actually makes me think of your first song, right? "Walk on Water" by, 30 Seconds to Mars. It is an incredibly fiery song,
Mhm.
and when I first heard it, I was like, I just have to ask, like, do you just wake up like that?
Basically. Yeah. Sometimes it's like I either wake up like that and I like listen to it while I get ready for work and I'm like, I am that bitch and we're going to work. But
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
it's like in the gym, I'm like, I'm that bitch. We're gonna
Mm,
lift this weight. Like
mhm.
and then sometimes it's like I get home from the gym and I've still got my headphones in and I just like walk laps in my apartment, just like coming down from the day and I'm like, I'm that bitch. Today was good. Like
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it hypes you up without being like angry hype. It's like motivational hype.
yeah.
So
S I'm that bitch, right? Are those, like, the kind of or do you practice affirmations?
sometimes I've
Mhm,
actually I don't do them like super formally.
mhm,
I can be one of those people that's like very negative on myself, who's like, "Oh, you idiot." And we were talking about this. I did a pistol coach course this past weekend,
mhm,
and I learned actually on the army ranges with like the pop up targets. I learned very quickly, especially I shot iron sights for like the first 4.5 years of my career. I hadn't touched a like optic or anything till drill sergeant school.
mhm,
Um, and I learned very quickly, when you miss, right, your adrenaline goes up, you start panicking, and you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And like very quickly, I had to, instead of being like, oh, you idiot, you missed it, I had to be like, that's fine, move on. And then just like
mhm,
talk myself through that. And so I ended up taking a different approach to that specific scenario. Be like, all right, pop one off, be like, that's one. Pop two
mhm,
off, that's two. Okay, I missed this one. Move on to the next one. And so it's just keeping that same chill, like it's gonna be fine. You can move forward. Don't even let it get to you. And I think
mhm,
for me, that song does that where it's like you can win this fight tonight, basically. So
mhm.
just chill out and go win it. That's kind of how I am.
Yeah, no, that's great because that self-talk, I think, it's an incredible tool, or it's to build you up, or it's an
Yeah.
incredible tool to break you down. And personally, it's a resilience skill, to just be able to say nice things to yourself,
Yeah.
or affirming things, or
Yeah.
encouraging things, especially when it isn't going your way.
Mhm.
Um,
I
and it,
definitely think, one of the affirmations that I do, I'm not one of those people that looks in the mirror, it's like, you are beautiful, you are amazing. I'm not one of those people.
yeah.
But I am one of those people that, like, when I took this job that I'm in, and I sat down on my day for orientation, like, I'm a very assertive person.
Hmm.
And a lot of people think that makes me very, like, proud. And I could be proud if I'm like confident in what I'm doing. But if
Hmm.
it's something that I feel like I could be inferior or I have a lot of things to learn or like I don't know everything, I'm not going to be that but I'll be quiet. And
Hmm.
like on my first day of this job, I sat down in orientation and there was like nurses and all this other stuff because that's a hospital. And so they hand everybody their badges and they hand me mine and then they hand me like a department leader tag that goes behind it. And
Mhm.
I had a moment. I was just like, I'm in the wrong place. I'm not supposed to be here right now.
Yeah.
This is not it. Like, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into? And I had to sit there and be like, "No, like, you're supposed to be here. They
Mhm.
picked you for this. Like, you're in the right place. Just shut up and go walk around and start." And so, it's kind of those calming things are my
Mhm.
affirmations, not so much like, I'm all that. Like, I feel like lifting makes that happen anyway, where you're like, "I'm all that." Sorry, my dog's
Mhm.
chewing on a chew toy. But, um I try to balance that, especially with modeling. People think you're gonna be stuck up because you get pictures taken and you don't look terrible. Uh,
Mhm.
but I try to be humble and try to be balanced and take criticism and if people are like, "No, you're killing it." I'm like, "Really? Okay." So,
Yeah, well, you bring that fiery spirit to modeling, but not so much in the sense of what I'm going to focus on is not so much like the pictures, the shoots,
mhm,
but the way you advocate for
mhm,
models.
yeah,
Um, and so, just tell us a little bit about that advocacy and what that means to you and why you do it.
for sure. So kind of back to what I said, like as a kid, I would defend people on the playground, right?
Hmm.
Um, Models are like kids on the playground. You know, you got some that advocate for themselves, they take care of their shit, like they show up. And if a photographer tries to do something stupid or like somebody, I don't know, a brand gets out of line or something, they can handle their business and they move forward. But there are some who are a little more vulnerable. I mean, the shoots might be more vulnerable.
Hmm.
The one-on-one with another photographer that you haven't necessarily built rapport with, you're in situations that could be bad. Most of the time, at least for me, they've been fantastic. I've only had like two bad experiences, and I've had like 100 to 200 shoots.
Wow.
So the percentage is good.
Yeah.
And I work with very professional people. I love my photographers. Um, but there are still, like in everything, there are bad apples. And those bad apples give black eyes to everybody.
Hmm.
And those two that I've had, they were bad apples. They may not have been that much of a bad apple for me, enough for me to be like, I don't like what you just said, or I don't like
Hmm.
what you're doing. But then I hear they cross that little line with me, and then they cross a big line with a
Hmm.
model that they're not necessarily afraid of, or they're not
Hmm.
necessarily like, "This girl could kick my ass if she wanted." And so when I hear that, I may make a mental note, like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna work with him again if he,
Hmm.
crossed the line or said something weird or I don't like whatever." But then I hear he did something way out of whack with somebody else,
Hmm.
then we're going to work. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
and
gonna
I've
really
seen
be
it on
honest.
your Instagram, like, you put the
Yeah,
folks on blast,
yeah,
you call them out, and, honestly, that kinda leadership is just really important, especially in a field that is so vulnerable, right? Like,
yeah,
people are vulnerable, like, I couldn't imagine I couldn't do it,
yeah,
so the fact that you're not only able to be in those vulnerable spaces, but still maintain strength is
yeah.
just a real testament to your character.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through, some like sexual assault type situations myself, and I made it out okay. I still deal with some of the stuff and the, residual effects and all that, but other girls, this girl, other girls don't need to go through what I've been through or what others have
Mhm.
been through, if we can help it. And that's one of the reasons why I advocate so hard is because I never want, if people are willing to push a boundary with me and I, would just punch them in the face if I had to,
Mhm.
like, I don't know what they're going to do to somebody who doesn't feel in that moment that she has an out or doesn't feel like, they have a way to defend themselves or say no or
Mhm.
photographers pressing them into doing something or anybody really, it doesn't even have to be a photographer,
Mhm.
pressuring them into doing something they don't want to do. That's where I'm like, yeah, no, we're going to war today. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and as far as for all things considered, the fiery spirit that is reflected in Walk on Water. It's interesting because that dichotomy of when many people hear Walk on Water, there's a certain imagery that comes with it,
yeah,
and it is like a overconfidence, right? And maybe that's what is being infused in your moments, whatnot. But
mhm,
the level of clarity and uh, I guess humility that you carry with it is just a really important piece to like direct that fire. And I just appreciate you sharing that song with us.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, my dog wants to join the show
That's
right
fine. Bring her on.
now. Here's
And
the
then
corgi.
what's her name?
Her name is Snickers.
Snickers.
Yep, Snickers, the
Pl-
baby corgi.
Pleasure to meet you, Snickers. And so your next song is "Cradle to the Grave,"
Yes,
by Five Finger Death Punch.
yes.
And I'll say the energy in that song, for me, of course, I want to hear what you have to say about it, but immediately when I heard it, I wanted to lift heavy things.
Yes.
And I
Stop.
shared with you that when I first heard it, I took it to the gym where I do jujitsu and played it, and it was just vibes, and it just really got me in
Yeah,
that space.
it does that.
But yeah, and I just love to hear like when do you throw that on, and what are you feeling when you hear it?
That song, honestly. So for me, the thing that really struck me about that song was how unapologetic it is. And one of the
Mm,
things that I've dealt with really my whole life is that push and pull of being a strong female and breaking boundaries, like being in people's face, saying things that people don't want to hear, um, or just being a type of person, like even with my family, right? That they enough, get a different toy. That they don't like. I'm
mhm,
not the daughter that just like puts her tail between her legs and is like, okay, like that's just not me. Um, and for a long time, I felt like I had to apologize for that. Long
mhm,
time, I felt like something was wrong with me. Like I was athletic, but I also wanted to be feminine, but I wanted to like go shoot guns, but all those things. And I just felt like I had a problem.
mhm,
And then I learned, as I sharpened my skills and kind of changed my view on myself, even with those, affirmations and just self talk, I realized like I'm perfectly fine the way that I am. Like
mhm,
I have people, and I have a decent following on social media. It's not nothing crazy. Um, but I got people that, are watching what I do, people that look up to me, people that send me their workout videos because they want my feedback or they're proud of themselves because they did this and I gave them a tip on how to get a deeper squat or something. I don't
mhm.
know. Even a girl from like England the other day who was like, "Hey, you haven't been on Instagram much. Wanted to make sure you're good." I was just like,
Oh
"Thanks."
man.
Like, and those things made me realize, plus the song, you know, I am like I've been this way since I was born to
Mhm,
the day that I die. I'm
mhm,
not gonna change, and
mhm.
those that are meant to find me are gonna find me. Those that want to be around that are gonna be around that. Like
Yeah,
and those that don't are gonna fall away, and that could be family, that could be friends, that could be relationships, and that's okay. And I finally learned like I don't have to keep everybody around, I don't have to keep everybody happy. If you don't want to be here, go. You don't want to follow it, unfollow. Like and it's an empowering feeling when you get to
yeah,
that. And so sometimes when I've dealt with family issues and people pushing back on just who I am as a person, that's been one of my lifeline songs that I'd listen to of like, I'll always be this from the cradle to the grave. Like that's it.
yeah,
So either accept it or don't. And if I'm doing something completely wrong, sure, we'll fix it. But if I'm just existing and you don't like it, oh well, bye.
yeah. No, that's so finding your people is like that's a message I would love to share with just anybody who cares to listen, right? Like I tell my kids that all the time, and and I'll share this story about one of my kids, and then go back to that. But um the other day my you mentioned that your body type is different, right? You're 5'2", broad shoulders, you got muscles, tattoos, but you're a model and you live in it, you walk in it, and you rock it well, right? And my daughter has broad shoulders, like, and she asked me one day, she goes, "Dad, are shoulders inherited?" And like, being where I was at, we just got done with practice. I'm like, I look at her and I'm like, yeah, everything's inherited. I was like, why? And she goes, well, my shoulders are broad. I look like a man. And I was like, "You don't look like a man." And I tried to tell her, like, like, "You are who you are. You can't
Yeah,
change that." And, like, it's not about what you're wearing, it's how you wear it.
yeah,
Um, and, although to me that's a logical response, you can't always respond to emotions logically.
yes.
Um, and so on the way home, I was thinking, like, what else could I do to be there for her?
Mhm.
And, when I got home, I pulled up your Instagram and I showed her pictures of you and as a model,
Mhm.
and I said, "Hey, does she look like a man?" And she goes, "No, she's beautiful." I'm like, "Exactly. It's not about what you wear, it's how you wear it." And so
Yeah,
I just wanted to share that with you and thank you for existing
I love
because
it. I
yeah,
love
I mean,
Yeah, tell her that shoulders are the eyebrows of your body. A lot of people wanna fill them in if they don't have them,
okay.
but if you have them, 'em, they're gonna talk shit, and then they're
Mhm,
gonna be jealous.
mhm,
Um, so that's it just is what it is, but
yeah,
having broad shoulders is a good thing because it
mhm,
people with broad shoulders, like, when you walk in a room, you notice them, and it's
mhm,
just how they walk because we just have shoulders, and we're just gonna walk with our heads held high,
mhm,
and it's just a natural thing. If you look at anybody who has broader shoulders compared to somebody who has, like, shoulders that just, like, fall down,
mhm,
those people with broader shoulders just carry themselves differently.
yeah,
Some of that's just how they're built.
mhm,
Um, so it's a strength, but it's one thing. I struggled a long time with body image, and that's part of the reason why I found bodybuilding because it's
mhm,
the aesthetic on top of the strength.
mhm,
Like my mom struggled with an eating disorder, and I didn't find out till I was probably like 20 or so. But looking back, it all makes sense, right? Because
mm,
she did like tons of cardio, like long marathons, and the only form of fitness was cardio. Um, and I mean, we were all pushed to be runners, all pushed to be whatever. And so when we got into track, what I found that was the right fit for my body type and agility, but strength was javelin because it's a
mm,
perfect mix of agility and strength. And you're throwing a spear, so you're like, I'm powerful right now, but you also can't be like just a very large, formless person like you
mhm,
can with maybe shot put or something else like hammer throw.
mhm,
Um, and I started to realize, I'm built differently. Like I look different than she does.
mhm,
I'm just built more like my dad. And I really thought growing up that was a bad thing. I really thought
mm,
that I was, fat the whole time. I thought that I there was something wrong with me because I didn't look like that. Then I fast forward into lifting and I'm like, wait a minute, like I was little back then, and now I'm like,
mhm,
no, now you want to say something, I'm just gonna kick you with my
yeah.
legs because they're huge. So
I tell my I when we joke about my daughter, and it's like she could kick the black spots off a soccer ball. You know
there
what I
you go.
mean? And but it's really interesting, like what you just said, and kind of
Yeah,
to the point I was making earlier, as far as you found bodybuilding and it felt right.
yeah,
Um, and that's the same thing when it comes to like people and
yeah,
their energy and things of that nature. Like I tell my kids, like find your people, right?
yes.
Like you don't
And
even need to go looking for them.
if those people make you feel like you have to apologize for doing things that you absolutely love to do, or that
Mhm.
you have to stop doing those things, like because they don't understand it. Not because like if you're out doing drugs, yes, stop doing that. But if it's like something that you're passionate about and
Mhm.
they just don't get it,
Mhm.
and because of that, they wanna, like, flex on you or shit on you or just,
Mhm.
cast you out for it, they're not your people, and
Yeah.
that's been the biggest shift for me probably in the last 3, 4 years. Is like, "No, I'm gonna go do what I know is right, and you're gonna watch my life take off whether you support it or not because
Mhm.
it's right." And that's it.
Yes.
So that's the cradle to the grave. It's like, "I'm gonna go do what I'm gonna do, and you're gonna watch. It's gonna be right." And you can either be along with it and you can support it, or you can
Mhm.
go somewhere else.
Well, and that is, I think, something that we've shared in our discussions, as far as like you being unapologetic,
Mhm.
unapologetically a strong woman, unapologetically a leader, and unapologetically like just about your confidence. When it comes to being like a woman in male dominated fields,
Yeah.
like how do you navigate that?
Um, it's taken a long time to kind of get to where I'm at now, like especially with my history of being mistreated in a couple relationships. I overcorrected in some ways. I wanted the attention. I wanted to like make sure they adore me, and that was
Mhm.
unhealthy. And then I completely shut off, and that was unhealthy. And then I
Mhm.
actually went to go run a women's shelter prior to the job that I have now, and that was where I learned I worked with all women. I
Mhm.
had to get along with them, and after I took that time to like really heal myself and kind of adjust the leader that I want to be, the person that I want to be, that's how I was able to kind of like gather my things and move on to the position I'm in now. And it's been absolutely fantastic. And with being a drill as well, the biggest thing was being tough, but not acting tough.
Mhm.
As a female, and even in the job I'm in now, it's the same thing. If I'd have come in and I'd been like yelling and like all in everybody's face, like they'd have just written me off right away.
Mhm.
If I'd gone to Benning and like been trying to like outdo all the men and everything, they'd be like, okay, bro.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think just that same knowledge kind of that I mentioned earlier of like,
Mhm.
I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't have to prove myself. I'm gonna prove myself by existing and by doing
Mhm.
what I know is right and doing things very like calculated, systematic, following the policies, relying on other people,
Mhm.
fostering kind of an environment of collaboration.
Yes.
Um, I feel like that has helped me bridge, when my second in command, he wanted my job before I came in, and he at the end of the day, within a few months, I realized he's a very fantastic asset. He may not
Mhm.
have been good for my specific role, but I can put him in a role and I can promote him to show A, I'm not threatened by him, and
Mhm.
B, he is a valuable asset that I need to keep around. And
Yeah.
so I promoted him, and he and I have had a fantastic relationship. He's my right-hand man, and then I have
Mhm.
another right-hand man in my other department. Same thing, but like totally yin and yang personalities. So I feel like, when you identify people's strengths, you don't have to prove yourself. You
Mhm.
meet their needs where they're at, and you they see that you're tough as a female without you having to be like, yeah, I could arm wrestle you. Like they know.
Mhm.
I haven't had to arm wrestle any of them, but they joke about it. And so it's just kind of that, like the presence, the consistency,
Mhm.
the genuine caring for people, making sure they know that I'm not trying to flex on them. I'm not out to save myself. I'm not out to, make their lives difficult. I'm not just taking care of me. Like I'm taking care of them and putting myself second.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's really what's been able to help me lead all the teams that I have. I have mostly men, and I have age ranges between 24 and like 75 that work for me,
Oh,
right?
wow. Okay.
So
That's a
the
big range.
generational gap too is huge, and you have to be able to bridge that. And
Mhm.
I think without the experiences that I've had, I would not be able to have the grit that I have to deal with some of them, the patience that I have to deal with others,
Mhm.
and then the difference in communication styles that I've had to have in order to get along with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, you definitely taken a lot of the experience and actuated it in a way that is, not only advantageous for you, but also for the people around you, which I think is truly that servant leadership
Yeah.
that people talk about. But you
I
said
feel like
something.
everybody can pinpoint a bullshitter too. Like
Yeah.
some of the firearms courses I've been to, I show up and I get quiet because I'm there to learn. Even though I
Uh-huh.
know a lot, I don't know a lot when it comes to non-military and
Mhm.
tactical things that are like, the military, they're like, here, take your rifle and go clean it. They don't tell you exactly what that's supposed to look like. You just do
Mhm.
it. Now, like I went to like a pistol course and I was like, teach me from step one all the way to the end. Pretend
Mhm.
I'm 5 and I know nothing because I want you to teach me the right way to do it. And I
Mhm.
think that's been a good one too, is being willing to learn and being open to learning and being like, I'm gonna forget. Let's like all the people that go to basic and they say they've shot firearms since they were 5 and they've got
Mhm.
it all figured out. They're the ones that
Yep.
shoot terribly.
Yep.
They've got it all figured out and they look dumb. That's why I'm like, I never want to be that person. Like I may know things, but even if I know things, I'm gonna pipe down until I make sure I know the right things. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
Just there's so you said something, right, which is being tough, not acting tough, which is
yeah,
there's a huge distinction. I'd love to hear you talk more about.
yeah.
Um, but just in fact, just for that, right? Like, what is the difference between being tough and acting tough? Um, and balancing your confidence versus your humility?
I would just say, like, you can have the presence. Like, I kind of think of it as like the use of force continuum. The first step to the use of force continuum is presence.
Mhm.
I want my presence to be enough to stop whatever's going on. Like, if I have to walk in, everything better stop.
Mhm.
And I think that comes with being tough, because if I walked in acting tough and I was put my chest up and I'm like, yo, y'all need to, like, just acting, like
Mhm.
I'm in charge. If I have to prove that I'm in charge, I'm not in charge.
Right.
If I walk in and I have the power just in the palm of my hand, I'm in charge. And
Mhm.
I've learned very quickly that, kind of like the art of war, that's book by full of like Chinese proverbs. I think it's
Mhm.
Chinese, by Sun
Yeah,
Tzu.
Sun Tzu, yeah.
I have one of those on my leg actually tattooed, but there's so many things to be learned from, like, the most effective battles are the ones that are not fought. And
Mhm.
that's paraphrase, it's not word for word. But that, I think I've taken a lot of those proverbs to heart, is that I'd rather fight a war before the war even starts and
Mhm.
work it out ahead of time, because that's like true toughness,
Mhm.
instead of having to come in and act like bravado and people see right through it. So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and also mental toughness. I feel like being mentally tough versus acting mentally tough and having resilience, like,
Hmm.
when somebody's resilient, and when somebody's just trying to power through it.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. I've never thought about that.
Yep. Full well when people are like, "Oh, yeah, no, it's all good, it's fine." They're like, "You just saw that person die." And they're like,
Mhm.
"No, no, no, it's fine, I'm good." And then,
Mhm.
like, 6 months down the road, they're suddenly, like, doing all sorts of crazy things and, like,
Mhm.
drinking a crap ton, spending a bunch of money on random things. You're like, "Yep, not okay."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting when you put it in that context, right? Because we respond to different stimuli differently.
yeah.
But I never really put it in the context of somebody acting mentally tough.
Yeah, I've had to think of it that way too, because I was the opposite for a very long time. I was, the things that I've been through, I was like, okay, I made it through here. Like, it happened. I'm just gonna put blinders up and just power forward.
Mhm.
And I thought I was cool, but then I started noticing, like, mental cycles that I was going through, and like toxic cycles, and those cycles speed up. And if you
Mm.
don't address them and actually be tough, while embracing the discomfort of addressing those hard things,
Mhm.
um, everybody's going to see, like, yeah, she thinks she's all right, she ain't all right. And
Mhm.
I've lost a lot of friendships through those cycles that I've been through, because I was just going through toxic cycles pretending I was fine.
Yeah. Wow. I'm thinking of a time where I could, kind of relate. And previous to me coming back over to the reserve side slash civilian side, I was in a part of the army that just like fundamentally didn't align with
Yeah.
my being and my spirit. Um, and I think at first my resilience was, at 1,000.
Mhm.
And just over time, I just kept like banging my head against the wall and not recognizing that I was no longer, being resilient. I was now acting resilient.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I can see all those ways where exactly like you were saying, the second and third order effects, where I was doing stuff that was, you know, maybe not as toxic as like, drinking a bunch or whatever,
Yeah.
but
But
just
out of
genuinely
character.
just out of character, unhappy. If one thing was just like being really, really frustrated,
Yep.
right? And really, really angry. I
Yep.
wasn't like lashing out necessarily.
Yeah, but your
Um,
whole mindset, demeanor,
mhm.
and everything will reflect it.
Yeah, and it definitely was that, and now I'm thinking about that. That's a very, like, that's gonna sit with me a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, man, I was out there acting, but likewise is, once I sat in that uncomfortability and made choices to, work through it in a different way,
Mhm.
I couldn't be more pleased, and that actually goes to something else that, you mentioned that I've really been wanting to just touch on is,
Yeah.
being there, right? Like, I deserve to be here and
Yes.
owning that space. Um, survivor's guilt is a thing, and generally it's like, I made it and I shouldn't have. I don't belong here. right?
Yep.
Imposter syndrome, I think, is really what I'm trying to get at.
Yep. Imposter
Um,
syndrome, 100%.
and I've in my current role, I feel that I'm around brilliant people, right? I'm around brilliant people who are really good at what they do, really thoughtful. And it makes me feel like, man, how did I even get here?
Yep.
But I'm here, right? And it wasn't, I
Yep.
didn't just walk in and get accepted. Like there were processes, there were evaluations, there were all these different things. And it takes me back to, I actually have the picture. One day I'll put it up, but at the drill sergeant academy, there was they had like the class photo or the platoon photos
Yeah.
of all the DSLs, and like if I were to pull this picture up of all the DSLs, it's some really impressive people, some like army history making soldiers, and just like
Yeah.
really amazing leaders. And I'm off to the side. I'm in there. You know what I mean? And I remember feeling like every day at the drill sergeant academy I didn't belong.
Yep.
Right. And I felt that until the day I took my hat and belt off.
Yep.
But I keep that with me as a reminder that, like, I do belong.
Yeah. I think that was kind of some of the stuff that I felt when I first got to my first unit because, the guys had deployed, they had seen things, they dealt with things, and I'm like over here, like brand new.
Mhm,
And same thing when I went to Benning at first, they've done a lot more than I've done,
mhm,
and they've seen a lot more. They've got years on me. Like at the end of the day, I'm super young for as far as I've made it. And
mhm,
so that's where I've learned to really just be quiet and just if the conversation comes up and I can get into it, cool. If not,
mhm,
I'm there and I'm just there
mhm,
and we'll build experiences kind of together. And then like
mhm.
by the end of those, we have our own stories that we can talk about. We
Yeah,
have like all those things that I didn't have coming in. I can be like, oh my gosh, remember that time we were like out on the trail and this trainee did blah blah blah. And then we
mhm,
start talking about that, but it doesn't start that way.
yeah,
And I feel like with those moments, that's where I've learned to not come in because I also know plenty of leaders that lead with their experiences. They lead with everything they've done. And I think
mhm,
I used to do that. I used to be like, "Oh, this is me. This is what I've done. This is," and that's kind of normal. But I also like going into this specific job that I have now, I wanted to keep things a little quieter and I wanted to
mhm,
let things just come out naturally and I wanted to not just lead with what I've done because immediately if you do that, you'll get strong armed, whether intentionally or not, by somebody who's done something else.
mhm,
Um, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna chill. I'm just gonna let whatever happens happen. I'm supposed to be here. And the
mhm,
couple times that I've really had the imposter syndrome or been like, oh my God, what am I doing? I've actually looked at my boss and I'm like, some days I feel like I got it. I know what I'm doing. Everything is great. And then the
mhm,
next day I'm like, well, what the hell am I doing? I have no idea how I got here. And he's
mhm.
like, yeah, same. And he's like the COO. And I was like, all right, that puts
Yeah,
it in perspective. So
mm,
everybody's dealing with that.
yeah,
And I feel like that is the mark of like you're in a growth phase. If you know everything
mhm,
you're doing from sun up to sundown, you know what tomorrow looks like, you know what next week looks like, you're not growing.
yeah,
It's that unknown of like, I think I got it, but I might not. And I don't know fully what's coming next. Like, that's that uncomfortable, like, I got here for a reason, but now I'm about to get to the next level and I don't know what that's about to look like.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that actually, you said something about building experiences together,
Mhm.
and how we're all kind of dealing with it in some way, but we leverage each other's experiences too, is kind of what I gathered from that. And that I think really segues into the third song, Champion by Tommy Prophet. And what I gathered from it is just really a lot of overcoming obstacles and being ready for the fight.
Mhm.
Um, how do you interpret that song, and how do you apply it? When do you listen to it, and what are the feelings you get from it?
Yeah. So that song actually, that's one of the only ones that actually has a specific moment tied to it.
Mm,
Um, I hadn't heard that song until my first competition. And I was at my competition and it was one of those where the pros went first, the amateurs went second, and I am not
mhm,
a pro, so I went second. Um, but when the pros went, there was the women's bodybuilding. And we
mhm,
watched one girl and then we watched another girl. And her routine was to that song. And
mm,
she um kind of as that song builds, that's when she went from like a kneeling position doing some poses to like full standing, like lat spread
Mhm.
power poses. And it
Mm.
was like that moment where it dawned on me like, holy crap, I'm in a suit, I'm tan, I'm about to step on that stage.
Mhm.
And like that's the next level, obviously, but I'm really here right now. Like I really
Mhm.
made it through a prep and I'm about to step on stage. And like I feel like I'm not ready. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Um, but it was just kind of a very powerful moment, and that kind of opened me up to, like, Tommy Prophet in general. Like, I love him dearly, like, all of his music is, like, my favorite, but that song for me was kind of that, like, defining moment for me of, like, I
Mhm.
actually made it to my competition and, like, accomplished a goal that I had and stuck with it because it was a long, grueling process. I mean, it's
Mhm.
a marathon, not a sprint. Um and yeah, it was just kind of a crazy moment, and then when she stood, everybody starts clapping because they do when
Mhm.
it's power poses. So, I was just like, "Dang, goals." Like, I got goals
Yeah.
and I just did it, and that's why I'm freaking out, but, like, goals. So,
Well, that okay, so I love that story, right? And I love that story because there's like symbolism in the way she went about it,
yeah.
and of course the way you interpret it in the song itself. But like as a woman in male dominated fields, entrepreneur, doing all the different things that you're doing,
Mhm.
what are some thoughts, some pointers, some words of encouragement you'd offer to somebody else who's gonna take that blind step into the unknown and jump out the window and do something they didn't necessarily think they were ever going to do.
I would say, like, if you think of something you wanna do and that thing keeps coming up, for more than just, like, a few days, like, it's happening every week, you're thinking about it every month, like, it's just in the back of your mind, like, you need to figure out what it is that's keeping you from doing it, and you
Mhm,
need to do it. Um, do the research, figure out what it will take. For me with modeling, I was definitely like, I didn't expect it. I was just like, oh, I could do a photo shoot. And then like my second photo shoot was like published. And I was like, oh.
mm,
And for me, then I was like, they all came out of the woodwork and they want to shoot. So then I'm like figuring it out on the fly, but you can kind of create things to be the way that you want them compared to what society tells you. Like, you don't have to do things by the book. You don't have to do
mhm,
things that everybody tells you. I mean, in some cases you do, but like, you don't have to be what everybody tells you to be if what you want to be is like safe and not doing anything terrible and it's what you're interested in, just go do it.
mhm,
And, people may not understand it. People may dislike it. People may talk shit. I found out even this past week that there were, after I got hired, people like Googled me and looked me up and did all these things. And I was like, all right, like, haven't heard anything since.
mhm,
And it's because, if you stick to your principles and you don't allow anybody else to like manipulate like the direction that you go and you figure out what your principles actually are. Like my Instagram kind of shows my principles. It's like
mhm,
fitness, modeling, like femininity. I don't really show my son a lot because there's creeps out there. But then in my stories, I'm like super real. I talk about real life stuff. I put
mhm,
people on blast for being weird. Um, but then I also like I engage with people in the DMs that want to like talk about things. I try to be there for other people. And and I've lost close family members that don't
mhm,
understand or think that I'm just getting attention or just, whatever. But then I have those people that are like, "Hey, making sure you're good. We haven't heard from you, but no, we're all
mhm,
missing you. Hope everything's fine." It's like you're gonna be whoever you want to be, however you want to do it,
mhm.
and kind of like we said earlier, whoever's meant to be there for it will be there for it, and you
Yeah.
may not have anybody there for it. You might just have to get comfortable being on your own for a bit, and
Mm.
that's okay too.
That is. That is, and that's actually, so hey, you heard it from Alyssa. Like if you got something on your mind that you want to do, go do it. Just get it done. And I think that's really real. Like that's how this podcast came about. And I'm appreciative of all the folks who've been investing in it and being a part of it, but, it was like I've been wanting to create for so long, and I hadn't been, and it was, just, like, eating at me, and so one day I just kinda cobbled together whatever the equipment I had laying around, and I'm like I called up, one of my buddies, and I'm like, "Hey, man, can we get on?" And he's like, yeah. And we sat here for 2 hours and we figured it out. And it was rough. And the
Yep.
next episode was rough. And the next episode was a little less rough, but still
Yep.
rough. And,
It it
at
starts out that way.
it
Like,
does.
it does, and it stays rough. I feel like it
Mhm.
doesn't get easier, honestly. Like,
Yeah. And that's
it
fine, because you get
yeah,
used to that, right? Like that
yeah,
uncomfortability becomes comfortable. And that's, like you said, where the growth is.
yes.
So I definitely appreciate that. Those words, I'm gonna take them to heart.
Okay.
Um, and just appreciate your time, and just the stories you shared with us. And I'd love for you to tell the people where they can find you, your socials, and and just to hopefully folks come in and look more into you and what you do, and just follow your journey.
Absolutely. My Instagram's pretty much where like I'm at. Usually I post on Facebook and all that, but it's kind of like they're tied together because Meta is like an enterprise now.
Hmm.
So I would say my Instagram and TikTok, both handles are my last name Chavez and then Lissa without the A, so it's just Chavez Lissa. I have a backup Instagram that's linked in my bio. That's just in case like Meta one day decides to like take me down, but they haven't yet, so we're good.
There we go.
Um, and do I have anything else? I have a Lemonade account, which is like part of TikTok, but I don't
Mhm.
really get on it. But I think it's the same. I think it's the same.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we get your links
Yeah,
in the description. You can find us at Rhymes That Resonate Podcast on Instagram, Threads, TikTok. And just again, thank you for your time, and like and subscribe.
I get no rest.